Welcome, everybody. Happy Friday morning and welcome to Benzinga All Access. We have one company joining us here today on the show. As always, we have a couple of things to do before we get started and bring on our guest. We want to thank our sponsor, Ticker, who is sponsoring every All Access show of 2022, letting us bring these companies and their CEOs and executives directly to you to have conversations about what they're doing in their marketplaces. We're going to roll a video for our sponsor, Ticker, right now, which will explain how to get involved with Ticker and get stock perks for the companies you own. Let's roll that video.
What is Ticker? That's right, Ticker with two I's, just like you. Because it's for you, for investing, for stock perks, for connecting you to public companies who reward you as a shareholder, as a brand lover. That's why people can't stop tickering. Ticker, where investors discover shareholder perks and consumers become investors in the brands they love. Ticker. Start tickering today.
Outstanding. All right. So, of course, you can get involved with Ticker at ticker.com. Ticker with two I's. Get involved with the companies you own. Get stock perks for companies like Amazon, like Nike, like Starbucks, all of these companies that you probably buy products from every single day anyway. I know Starbucks is the first way that I usually start my morning. I'm sure a lot of you do too. Ticker.com. You can get involved and get perks at the company's site. Before we bring on our guest, we're going to run through some top news headlines of the morning, see what's going on in the markets. Aaron Bree is not with us this morning, so we're going to run through some headlines and just check what's going on out there. One of the first things we're reporting in the news is chip makers cutting costs in the post-pandemic slump. It looks like it's a pivot from high demand for semiconductors to the post-pandemic slump. Across the industry, chip companies are instituting hiring freezes, laying off workers, cutting capital spending plans, and reducing factory input. The big notable company here that's a part of this slump is the chipmaker Qualcomm. It said on Wednesday that it's pausing its hiring and curtailing spending after a bleak outlook for its current quarter, in their words. They had a call with their analysts, and their CFO explained that the macro environment changed in a short period of time, and it abruptly went from supply shortages to demand declines. So, interesting dynamic here to see is we had all of these supply shortages right after the pandemic. We had all of the supply chains that were all kinds of impacted by the way that our shipping routes were shut down, and the COVID really threw everything for a loop when it came to actually getting the supplies to the end consumers. Now we're starting to see a demand decline in some industries, and the chip industry seems to be one of the ones that's getting hit first. So, something to keep an eye on there, especially with chip makers. Obviously important in everything from our vehicles to our phones to a lot of other devices that we use every day. So keep an eye on some of those companies, especially big names like Qualcomm. Another headline that we had come out this morning, actually referencing a Wall Street Journal article, is homeowners moving to rural areas. It seems to be a new shift in the way that our consumers and our workers, especially in the digital environment, are moving around their residences. Looks like a rise of remote work. Increasing cost of housing is driving far more homeowners further away from urban areas. Buyers are purchasing homes, and the year ended in June. They're moving a median of 50 miles from their previous residences outside of urban areas. So it seems to be a trend where, especially, obviously, remote work seems to be a big factor in all this. When we had everybody start working from home during the pandemic, it looks like people are continuing the trend of wanting to be outside the city, get outside remote, and move away from urban areas. So, of course, the real estate market is a big topic right now. We're all looking to see what prices are going to do over the next 6 to 8 to 12 months. This may have an impact here, especially if we go through the winter time, which is usually a period of more sickness. In addition to the pandemic we just had, it's going to be interesting to see if some of these urban areas start to take a hit in real estate prices as these people continue moving out of those areas and working remotely in more rural areas. Another one we've got here. Headline we came out with this morning, the Coinbase CEO criticizing Singapore's crypto regulations. Brian Armstrong came out, criticized Singapore's stance on Web3 at the FinTech Festival just about a month ago, saying that it wants to be a Web3 while simultaneously regulating the industry. Now, Singapore has also repeatedly warned that cryptocurrencies are highly speculative and volatile. We know that already, but it's also banned crypto advertising in public areas and on social media in Singapore, one of the first places to do this. A couple of agencies responded and said that crypto companies are responsible for protecting their customers, as many retail investors have lost money to that speculative crypto. So still a lot going on in the crypto world. We actually have our crypto event, the Future of Crypto, coming up on December 7th in New York City. So we're going to be discussing all of these topics that are going on recently. We're going to have everything about Coinbase. We're going to have everything about Web3. We're going to have some of the biggest speakers in the industry there joining us. So a lot of headlines have come up in the last month. We're going to be certain to cover them all at the event, but always a lot going on, especially with Web3 and crypto. The jobs reports is probably the most interesting thing that's flooding the headlines right now. Job growth remaining strong in October. Employers added 261,000 jobs, even as the Federal Reserve raised their interest rates to cool the job market. The unemployment rate rose to 3.7%. The Fed has been monitoring that labor market to assess whether their interest rate hikes are impacting inflation. They're concerned that increasing wages will fuel inflation, and they aim to cool inflation without sending the economy into a recession. So this is a very delicate balance here. The Fed has mentioned this multiple times. Jerome Powell talked about it after the Fed decision this week. It's a very delicate balance of trying to raise rates enough to cool down this surging jobs market, but we also have unemployment and job openings rising. So it's kind of a balancing act for the Fed where they have to decide if raising rates is the right move to try and cool down the inflation that we have, but if it's also going to impact these jobs and keep those job openings going up higher. So as of now, the jobs market looks healthy, but as we move forward, is the right move to continue raising rates? Is the right move to pull back on that? We're going to have to wait and see, but obviously a lot of jobs added in October, so it seems like we're trending in the right direction. The Fed's rate hike will obviously impact a lot of this going forward as well. What we did see yesterday, even with those jobs added, 261,000, we saw stocks sink after the market closed, especially yesterday. And even the futures this morning sinking in anticipation of that jobs report. Investors fearing that the Fed would hold rates at a higher level for longer to cool inflation. So rather than just this rate hike of 0.75 basis points we saw this week, moving forward, are they going to continue raising those rates? And a lot of investors seem to be of the opinion that they are. The S&P saw its fourth straight decline. Apple fell 4%. Amazon, its longest decline since 2009. I've seen that in my portfolio the last couple of months here. Investors seem to be more concerned with the ultimate level of rates than with the pace of the tightening, meaning that they're more concerned about what these rates are going to do and what the Fed's going to do next, rather than the tightening of the job market and the inflation market that we have. So the Fed is expected to raise rates again at a higher point, just at a slower pace, per Jerome Powell's speech this week. So again, something to keep an eye on, especially with the jobs market sitting the way it is. What is the Fed going to do next? We'll keep an eye on it and see if they continue to raise, just kind of slowing down as we move towards what seems to be a better jobs market. What we also saw, PayPal shares, one of the big movers we saw specifically, falling after their Q3 earnings report, 13% down in after-market trading on Thursday. Third quarter earnings report showed cuts to its revenue outlook. They expected full-year revenue for 2022 to increase 8.5% compared to the 18% growth it shared with investors last November, so about a year ago. It also announced the repurchase of $939 million of stock and closer ties with Apple that could benefit PayPal and Venmo merchants and consumers. So another one to keep an eye on there with digital payments. Keep an eye on PayPal and see where they're going to go next. Just going to do a quick headline check before we bring our guest on at 10. See what else we've got going on out there. One of the top headlines on Benzinga this morning. The Elon Musk drama and the Twitter drama going on right now is obviously flooding the headlines. Everybody's got a piece out about it right now. He's doing a major shakeup over at Twitter, and one of our top headlines this morning was about Musk suspending Twitter work on the crypto wallet. It's interesting because he came in and there's been this huge shift in the C-suite where all of these executives have been gone, let go, left the company. He's doing a major shakeup here. And Twitter apparently is looking to find between $1.5 million to $3 million a day in savings from servers and cloud services, which obviously translates over to this crypto wallet they were working on. Musk now putting a delay on that. It's interesting because you're not sure what Musk is going to do with Twitter next, but it seems like he wants to completely reinvent the entire company. So we're going to have to keep an eye on it. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Twitter shares. We're not sure off the top of our heads, obviously. But he's obviously going to do pretty much anything he can to increase things over to the subscription model, $8 a month for verified users. Not something that Twitter's ever done before, obviously. And a lot of people are certainly on Twitter tagging Musk and everything else. So again, something to keep an eye on in the top headlines. Anything else that we're looking at here before we get ready to move ahead to the rest of the show? Not a lot of big headlines otherwise this morning. Anything you guys are seeing out there, obviously throw it in and let us know if you want to go over it. But otherwise, headlines, the other thing that we had actually reported on, and something we're actually pretty interested in, is the turkey price predictions for Thanksgiving of this year. Obviously, we're in November now, only a couple of weeks away to get to Thanksgiving. But something that we've been seeing, and we had a report on it actually on Tuesday of this week, the bird flu that swept through the U.S., apparently killing off enough birds to the point where turkey production and numbers are down 6% from where they were last year. Some of these producers are starting to give in estimates that the turkey prices, especially around Thanksgiving when there's this demand for this kind of product and poultry, is supposed to be skyrocketing upwards of 25 to 30%. So there's something to be said here for keeping an eye on futures with anything that comes to any kind of food stock of poultry or anything else, because this bird flu has apparently taken the production of the turkeys that we obviously need around Thanksgiving down to almost zero. So something to keep an eye on there as well. Just one of the headlines that we noticed. Anything else we want to run through here? Other top headlines. We've also got, let's see, just going through the headlines on Benzinga.com. There was an interesting exclusive that we had this morning. There's a crypto billionaire, Brock Pierce, and he joined a psychedelic venture fund, says the potential reward is immeasurable. Now, this is interesting to us because psychedelics is kind of it's kind of the industry that looks almost like cannabis did a couple of years ago, where everybody was kind of tentative to jump into it, kind of afraid to get into it, and then obviously it wound up being a burgeoning industry. Now we've got the regulations that people are trying to get set. We've got the Banking Act that people are trying to get moved forward. And a lot of people are wondering, is psychedelics going to be the same way? Are we going to see the same boom in the psychedelics industry that cannabis saw? And is everybody just kind of afraid to get into it because of some of the stigma that hangs on to an industry like that? We don't know, but we had an exclusive this morning about Brock Pierce joining the psychedelic venture fund and saying that he thinks the reward in the future could be immeasurable, maybe even greater than cannabis. So obviously one man's opinion there, so nothing much to base off of, but it is interesting to see some bigger voices starting to get involved in the psychedelics front, and we'll see where it goes from here and see if they have the same kind of future that cannabis might have. So that being said, running through all the headlines on Benzinga.com, obviously you can catch up with everything else that we have going on in the news at Benzinga.com, or of course our socials and all of our other channels. With that being said, we want to go ahead and jump into Benzinga All Access. Bring on our guest for this morning, Dr. Pnina Fishman, the PhD and CEO of Can-Fite Biopharma.
Hi, hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Dr. Fishman?
Good, very good, thank you.
It's wonderful to have you here. We're very excited to get started and talk a little bit about Can-Fite and what you guys do. For anybody in our audience that may not have heard of you guys before or seen any of your content, would you mind starting off by giving us an introduction to the company and what you guys do?
Sure, of course. We are an Israeli-based biopharmaceutical company. We are developing small molecule orally bioavailable drugs where the claim to fame is that it's very safe drugs which target only pathological cells and spare the normal body cells. We started a couple of years back, and today our two leading indications are psoriasis. This is a very innocent drug which treats patients with psoriasis. We are currently initiating the pivotal phase 3 clinical study, and I think that what we would like to focus today is our second drug candidate and second indication. The second drug candidate is namodenoson, currently positioned for the treatment of advanced liver cancer.
Understood. Okay, can you also maybe give us a little bit of background here on how you came to join the company, what your background was before Can-Fite, and some of the things that have led you guys up to the point that you're at now as a company?
Of course. So I'm a PhD in microbiology, biochemistry, and I came across a very interesting, it's not an idea, it's clinical finding that cancer can metastasize, can go everywhere in the body, but not to the muscle, striated muscle tissue. This is not very rare, but in, I think, the last 15 years, only 2 cases have been reported with metastasis in the muscle. So we asked the question why, and we realized that muscle cells release small molecules which have the capability to inhibit specifically the growth, the proliferation of cancer and of inflammatory cells. We were successful with the help of a scientist at the NIH to synthesize molecules which imitate those who are excreted or are secreted in the body by the muscle cells. And today, these are the molecules in our pipeline. These are the drugs that we are currently developed, as I said, for the treatment of psoriasis. This is our first drug candidate, piclidenoson, and for the treatment of advanced liver cancer by the second drug candidate, namodenoson.
Okay, wonderful. Now, I'm glad you brought that up because that's where we want to gear a lot of this conversation towards this morning. At a top U.S. liver disease conference very recently here, you were presenting some really interesting results of a liver cancer patient who completely cleared their cancer when they were treated with Can-Fite's drug namodenoson. Can you tell us more about this case and some of the highlights here?
Of course. So we are treating patients in a very advanced stage of their liver cancer disease. It is defined as stage B. And in fact, on the market, there is no drug for the treatment of this type of the disease at this stage. The other drugs on the market are for the A stage, and I can say that all of them induce hepatotoxicity, meaning toxicity to the liver. It's a type of a paradox because you need to treat a liver disease and your drug induce liver toxicity. Our drug, in distinction from all the other drugs which are now on the market or under development, not only that they do not induce toxicity to the liver, but they are protective to the liver and at the same time induce robust anti-cancer effect towards the liver cancer cells. So what we were successful to show during our phase 2 clinical study that the patients who were type B responded very nicely to the drug. We approached both the FDA in the United States and the EMA in Europe with a pivotal phase 3 clinical study protocol, and we have approved to conduct this study. And currently our study, phase 3 pivotal study, is open to the enrollment of patients. Going back to these patients which participated in our phase 2 clinical study, this patient was treated for 5 years with our drug. She was full of metastases all over her body, and she was totally cured after she was treated with our drug namodenoson. This is very, very rare. I have to say, to the best of my knowledge, I do not know of any patient which was full of metastases and was totally cured. So this is why our drug is very unique. This is why we are taking this drug into a pivotal phase 3 study, and hopefully, if we will conclude this study positively, we will be able right afterwards to register this drug with both the FDA and the EMA.
Excellent. Okay, really interesting results here. We want to go ahead and dive into this in a little bit more detail. First, the results that you just kind of walked us through are incredible to hear, right? It seems like these can have a major impact on the marketplace and on people as a whole. Can you maybe paint a picture for us a couple of years down the road? If you're able to build on these results that you just announced at this liver cancer conference, how do you see this being able to impact people as a whole across the world if these results continue?
As I mentioned, we are presenting specifically this patient because she really responded in a fantastic way. There were also other patients which responded with a partial response. This patient which responded in such an amazing way gives us the opportunity to continue with the pivotal phase 3 clinical study, and hopefully other patients will respond similarly to this patient. Of course, in the current study, we will be treating 450 patients. In the former study, we treated only 78 patients. So it really gives a hope to a patient population which will be able to respond to our drug in the same way that this patient responded. And this is actually what we are hoping, and this is what pushes us to continue and develop this drug, which with the data that we see have lots of chances to treat successfully many other patients with this devastating disease.
Got it. Okay, thank you for sharing some more context there. That's really helpful. I also want to go a little bit further into the next step for nanodemazone. How can everybody who needs it have access to it? You kind of mentioned it already a little bit just now, but what is the plan to commercialize this, get it out into further markets, get it in front of everybody who needs it? How are you going to increase the exposure and the access to nanodemazone going forward?
Of course, first of all, in the current phase 3 study, we are going to treat patients in Israel, in 5 countries in Europe, in Canada, and in the United States. This study will take at least between 2 to 3 years, and then we will be able to register this drug. Our business development strategy is to develop, to register, but not to market. We have already signed a couple of partnerships, couple of out-licensing agreements, where the partner will be the one to market the drug upon registration. We signed an agreement in Canada, and an agreement in Eastern Europe, in an agreement in Central Europe, one in China and one in Korea. And we are continuing to make efforts to find more partners that will be able to market our drug after it will be registered.
Got it. Okay, thank you for the context there. Now, can you also talk a little bit about the differentiation of namodenoson and some of the other liver cancer drugs that are on the market now? I am certainly that you guys aren't the only ones that are doing this, but obviously the results that you guys just announced are very, very promising and very exciting. Can you talk a little bit about other competitors in the market? What sets namodenoson apart from other drugs that are similar to it in the marketplace today?
The other drug, as I mentioned, I will not go in details into the others. I can go in details into our drug, but some of them are biological drugs. Some of them target specific target, which not always will influence, will do something only to the pathological cells. Usually, it can damage also the normal body cells, or more specifically, the liver cells. Our drug will bind and will induce apoptosis, meaning cell death, and will eradicate the cancer cells from the body, but it will bind only and specifically to the disease cells, to the cancer cells, and will spare the normal cells. The reason is that our drug binds specifically to a cell surface receptor that can be found only on cancer cells. More specifically, this target, this receptor, is designated as the A3 adenosine receptor. And luckily enough, and we are researching it for many years, we know that this receptor can be found only on pathological, but not on normal body cells. Our drug, when it gets into the body, it will bind to those cancer or other pathological cells only, and not to the normal body cells. This is why when a patient is treated with our drug, the safety profile of the drug is excellent, and only the cancer cells will be affected, will be dead, died, and will be eradicated from the body specifically. And this is what differentiates our drug from the other drugs on the market.
Understood. Okay, now in the press release that we used to reference some of our materials getting ready for this, you guys had put out your PR that stated that pivotal phase 3 study is open for patient enrollment, and you're going to recruit patients in Israel, the U.S., 5 other countries in Europe. What is the plan for moving that open enrollment forward and getting people involved, and what is that process going to look like when people do get involved in the open enrollment?
Usually the process is that you need to submit your protocol to the regulatory authorities. It's a little bit different from the United States, where after the FDA approved it, you submit only to the specific medical center that you would like to conduct your study. In Europe and in Israel, you first need to submit your protocol to the ethical committee in a specific medical center, and after it will be approved, they will send it to the Ministry of Health. You are waiting for this approval, and then you are ready to go and to initiate the study. Israel is the first country which is enrolling patients, and after Israel, other countries will join, countries in Europe, as I mentioned, Canada and the United States, and we are talking now about weeks or days. So we are ready to go, and we are going to open it for enrollment in the next couple of days or weeks. Depends on the country.
Excellent. Okay, now one of the other questions I had for you, Pnina, was as you look ahead to all of the things you're going to have to do to continue developing namodenoson, to continue building on the results that you just announced at that liver cancer conference, what can you talk a little bit about the financing side of the business, the capital that's going to have to go into the drug development and what's going to happen next? How is the company set up for success there? And can you give us any details on maybe if you're planning any capital raises or anything else exciting that you would want an audience to know about?
So you may know that Can-Fite is trading on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange and on the New York Stock Exchange, CANF. And during the years, we did a couple of fundraisings. Also, as I mentioned before, and it is very important, especially at this advanced stage of the development, we created partnerships. We have already signed 7 deals. Out of it, the company has already received upfront money, and we are of $20 million, and we are going to receive, based on regulatory milestones, additional $130 million. So we are very open, and we are doing lots of efforts to continue the work and out-license our drug. And this is a very good origin to get more money into the company, which will enable us to finance all our programs which are ongoing. At that moment, we are well positioned regarding financing. We have concluded the former Q with $12 million in the bank, and we hope that more agreements will be signed, and we will be able to continue to finance all our programs as we did in the last couple of years.
Great. Okay. Wonderful detail there. Thank you very much for that. It's very helpful. Now, I also want to ask too, other than just namodenoson and what you guys are working on with these latest results, is there anything else in the pipeline from Can-Fite that you guys are working on, excited about, want the public to know about? What else is the company actively involved in?
Okay, so with the very same drug, namodenoson, we are also we're enrolling now patients for a phase 2b study for the indication of NASH. NASH is a non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, is a disease which affects the liver of people. It's accumulation of fat in the liver, not on an alcoholic basis. Unfortunately, there is no drug on the market today. There is a race about like 20 to 30 companies who are doing lots of work in order to bring a drug to the market. So we were successful to conclude a phase 2A study very nicely a couple of months back. We are now conducting a phase 2B study in order to open the gate for a phase 3 study. What we are doing now, in distinction from the former study, is that we are taking biopsies from patients. So this is one additional indication which we have lots of hopes based on the very good data of the phase 2A study, which have been already published in a peer scientific journal, and also we presented it in international meetings. The first actually drug candidate is piclidenoson. We recently successfully concluded a phase 3 clinical study, and we are doing now all the preparatory work for the pivotal phase 3 study, and we are working now on a protocol for this study, which we will be submitting to the FDA and to the EMA together with a registration plan. So as you can see, all our programs are in advanced clinical study. We have already a clinical proof of concept, And we hope very much that the results will be reproducible.
Fantastic. Okay, Pnina, a final question for you here to kind of get a look at the big picture of all of this, right? Obviously, giving us detail about namodenoson, the results you just had with this liver cancer patient, all wonderful news, and we're really excited to hear that for you. But to give us a look at the potential, too, especially for our investors that are listening with us, if you could look down 5 years down the road, what do you think the potential revenue opportunity, the potential impact on the market could be if your results continue and you're able to get namodenoson in front of the wider marketplace? How big of a market opportunity could this be?
Sure. So we need to keep in mind that the market for psoriasis is around $20 billion. And although there are other drugs on the market, a profile that we have with our drug is an excellent, because again, we are treating the patients with a safe drug, which can be very good for those who are suffering from psoriasis. It's a chronic disease, and unfortunately, the patients need to take a drug for the rest of their time life. We are comparing our drug to Otezla, which took like 1/3 of the market. So it's a huge, huge potential here. Regarding the NASH, it's also a huge market of $30 to $35 billion, which with yet no drug on the market. The advanced liver cancer is a $2 billion market. You all know that patients will move from one drug to another because they fail. We are a second line and the third line now, and we believe that every patient that failed on another drug will be able to be treated with our drug. As I mentioned, our strategy is to out-license, and we think that investors will be able to benefit if they will get now into the share, because more out-licensing agreements are expected, and actually this builds our market value, and also, of course, the huge market of the drug that we are looking at.
Fantastic. Ton of great information there. So many good things to look forward to from Can-Fite Biopharma. The information you've given us just this morning, very, very exciting. And thank you so much for sharing it with our audience. Dr. Pnina Fishman, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for all your questions. Thank you.
It's our pleasure. And that was Dr. Pnina Fishman, PhD and CEO of Can-Fite Biopharma, joining us there. Really interesting liver cancer results they just announced at a conference in the last couple of weeks. Another thing to keep an eye on there, and certainly looking forward to having them back eventually. That is going to do it for us. We had just one company on All Access today to wrap up the Friday and the week. So we're going to go ahead and roll the video for our sponsor, Ticker, that runs every single one of our All Access shows one more time, show how to get involved with them, and then we will close out Benzinga All Access.
What is Ticker? That's right, Ticker with 2 I's, just like you. Because it's for you, for investing, for stock perks, for connecting you to public companies who reward you as a shareholder, as a brand lover. That's why people can't stop tickering. Ticker, where investors discover shareholder perks and consumers become investors in the brands they love. Ticker. Start tickering today.
Fantastic. And that's going to do it for us here on Benzinga All Access. Thank you as always for joining us. Thank you to all of our companies and sponsors to get involved. We'll see you next week back here on Friday.